Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2020 Spring Cooper Union Alumni Association elections Meet the Candidates Night. My name's Shankar. I'm a 2003 graduate, chair of the elections committee for the Alumni Association. Welcome all of you, and thank you for watching. So tonight we have 6 candidates with us. There's 2 candidates for trustee and 1 each for treasurer, secretary, alumni events, and faculty student liaison. We're going to begin with the candidates for trustee, alumni trustee. And they're going to introduce themselves, and then we're going to ask them a couple of general questions. So the candidates for alumni trustee are Anthony Ayano and Carol Wolf. And let me start with you, Carol. Please introduce yourself. And you are spotlighted.
Hi.
Hello, how you doing?
Good. My name's Carol Wolf, and I graduated from the art school in 1984. And I prepared a statement. You asked us to prepare a statement, so I'm just going to read that now. And thanks, Shankar. Thanks, everybody involved in arranging this. When I wrote my campaign statement, which is on the website for anyone who'd like to read it, I was already deeply concerned about Cooper's future and the success of the 10-year plan. We're coming up on the end of year 3, and we have succeeded in meeting the milestones for the first 2 years. But in my statement, I mentioned that we should all be mindful that the fundraising goals increase each and every year, and also that I was greatly troubled by the trending decline in alumni donor participation rates over the past 3 years. That was written in the first week of March. Since then, the COVID-19 outbreak has meant that Cooper's classes have had to move online. The school is experiencing significant financial challenges from rising technology costs and emergency response costs. They've lost revenue from rentals and other revenue streams. Current projections show that Cooper Union is facing a $5 million budget shortfall for this fiscal year. I said in that statement back in early March, quote, "The Cooper community has been through some pivotal moments in the last decade, but I believe things have never been more critical than they are at this very moment." I was sincere about that at the time, and yet since then the world has turned upside down. I've lost people I care deeply about. Many of you probably have too. It's a very emotional time. But even through the distraction of all the canceled plans and uncertainty about the future, we need to remember Cooper Union and how important it is now more than ever to return to Peter Cooper's mission of providing free education to all who attend there. I've worked very hard over the last 8.5 years since Jamshed Bharucha dropped the tuition bombshell on us. And I care so very much about getting back to the full scholarship model that made us who we are. I want us to do that in a way that will put the school on a financially stable footing as we move into the future. The financial difficulties facing the school because of COVID-19 crisis will surely have an impact on our progress with the 10-year plan. And when the board is making difficult decisions in the coming months and years, I want to be in that room to make sure that Peter Cooper's mission of providing a free education to all students remains a top priority and that it is not pushed to the side for any reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. So you spoke about how we're kind of facing another budget crisis at the moment. Do you foresee, have you had any discussions with people who are on the board now, or do you foresee additional cuts? What do you think college will look like as we go forward, in the fall when people are going to be remote? Do you think that's something that changes the model of Cooper Union, or is it just something that we're going to come out of and be able to get back on track? I guess, actually, let me summarize what I'm trying to say. Do you think that we are facing a delay? I mean, is it, instead of a 10-year plan, is it going to be a 15-year plan? What do you think?
Well, the only information I have comes from being the chair of the annual fund right now, and which means I'm on the executive committee, and hearing what information we get from the school, from messages from Laura Sparks, from our own alumni trustees. I have not heard anything that suggests we can't stay on track with the 10-year plan. I know that they're pursuing all kinds of avenues to try to make up the gap. I haven't heard anybody say that the 10-year plan's in jeopardy. But I do think there's going to be some difficult decisions being made in that boardroom. There have to be, because this whole thing is a game changer, and they're going to be making decisions about, I mean, I graduated from the art school. How is art going to be taught online, and for how long? I don't know what they're going to do. All I have is the information that everybody else is getting, but I've been paying very close attention to it.
Absolutely. So this year we are facing, I think you said there's a projected $5 million budget shortfall. How does that compare? How does that compare to the year before?
There wasn't a budget shortfall the year before.
Or a projected one for the next year, I believe.
That came to us in a message from Laura Sparks when they had the special Giving Tuesday a couple weeks ago. And that gave me a lot of hope. That Giving Tuesday thing raised more money than they expected to, and it engaged a lot of people. The budget shortfall is an emergency issue and was not planned for. And I'm sure they're scrambling right now to come up with ways to make it up. If I get on the board, I'm not a investment banker or financial person. My strengths are in communication and messaging and branding. And my job on the board would be to, it's always been my dream to help them craft the message for why Cooper's such a great place, craft a narrative around why it should be free, and convince people that it's something we should save. So, I can't answer a lot of questions about budget shortfalls. That's not going to be my strength on the board. It's going to be other areas.
Okay, that's fair. So on the board, there are normally different committees that a board member serves under. So I guess the one that you seem like you'd like to focus on, I guess they have something called a communications committee. Can you talk a little bit more about your ideas for that role on the board?
Well, I would definitely want to be on the communications committee. There's also a alumni engagement committee, I think. I'm not, I haven't been oriented to how they work things and how they select people to be on different committees. Rachel Warren may have ideas for what committees I will have to be on, but I do think communications and fundraising, I've been doing the annual fund for 5 years now. It would be nice to tackle it from their, perspective and see how I can help there. Scott Lehrman is coming off the Board of Trustees this year, and his strength is in communications and branding. I think I might be able to fill that void. He's leaving in the end of June. So that might be of help.
Sure. And it would be good maybe to get his perspective as he exits as well.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else, Carol, that you'd like to talk about?
Like I said, I worry about the 10-year plan. As long as the lift gets heavier and heavier every year, I've always been worried about what are we going to do when we get further into the 10-year plan, and it becomes a really hard struggle to keep alumni participation up, keep donations coming in. And I want to be there when if they have to make any difficult decisions about how this is going to all play out. I want to make sure that they stay focused and remember that Peter Cooper's mission is important.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. Appreciate your being here, and
Thank you, Shankar.
Thank you. And okay. Let's see here. Sorry, guys. Give me a bear with me. I'm still a little trying to. Okay. Our next alumni trustee candidate is Anthony Ayano. Anthony, I'm going to spotlight you, and please unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Anthony Ayano, Cooper Union class of 1985. I was a BE with a major in electrical engineering. I was also fortunate enough to go to Cooper Union back in a time when we had the opportunity to take classes at NYU for free, and students at NYU had the ability to take classes at Cooper Union and pay for them. So a real beneficiary of the free education from Cooper Union. I took that start in business, and after working for several years at Con Edison on the engineering side of the business, moved into management there, eventually got my MBA, and I've been in investment banking for the last 25 years, 12 years at JP Morgan, 12 years at Morgan Stanley, and the last year running RBC's Power Utilities and Infrastructure Group. And in that role, I get to provide strategic advice to public utility companies. So I get to advise lots of boards. I get to participate in lots of board meetings and have lots of board experience. I am so honored to be considered for this position. Yeah, I want to thank the CUAA, all the work that they've been doing. Specifically, I thank Carol and all the things she's done, and clearly the contributions that she's made have been fantastic. I'd like to also highlight, doing some of my homework here, looking through the plan for full tuition and the work that the Free Education Committee has done, and the thoughtfulness that they put into the plan is really important. And I think Carol highlighted some of the unique challenges that we have now. I think it's more important than ever to move to a full tuition, full scholarship for Cooper Union attendees. It made it possible for people like me to get an education, and then made it possible for really the school to have a differentiated platform that appeal to a lot of people in the shoes that we've walked in. So it's so important as a fundamental concept. But the challenges are unique, and it really is a unique point in time. I think if you look at what's happening now, obviously it's going to be harder for the basic students to pay for their tuition. So having that platform is going to be hugely important. it's going to be also equally challenging to execute on the plan. You know, the Free Education Committee highlighted all the challenges in that just cutting expenses was not going to be enough to get us there to free tuition. The hole was too big, and that challenge is going to get harder because we are a community. We're going to want to preserve jobs. That's going to be so important moving forward. We're going to have to think about that. We're going to have to think about how in these challenges times, how do we increase the fundraising? That's a key tenet of that plan. And we're really going to have to focus on that. We're also, a risk which wasn't necessarily outlined in the plan is our biggest financial asset, the Chrysler building. We've got, that building is going to be challenged from a revenue perspective. And I've already heard rumblings, at least there was an article about looking to recut that lease. How do we deal with that? And all of those things are going to be a hugely important focus for the board moving forward. The committee did a great job of highlighting inherent risk and all the things that could happen, and nobody anticipated this risk as being one of them. But once again, those things were thought about, and they're going to have to. The board is going to really have to do a good job of providing leadership and governance in this time to continue that focus. We're going to have to reevaluate many of the basic tenets of that plan in order to achieve those important objectives. And I think that at this point, I bring a unique skill set on the financial side, which I think will be helpful at the board level. As I said in the beginning, I've had the opportunity to advise a number of boards. I've helped them make really hard decisions. In the utility sector, one of the hardest decisions that a board has to make is cutting a dividend, because that's how their investors are relying on them. But in order to achieve broader objectives, I've helped boards get to that decision and create viable paths for them to move forward to achieve their corporate objectives. One of the things I've done is on the not-for-profit side, I was on the board of my daughter's elementary school, the Metropolitan Montessori School. The school had bought the building next to theirs and was looking to renovate that in order to put in the facilities it needed to compete relative to other private schools on the Upper West Side. I led the finance committee. I was the treasurer, and I was the one that had to challenge the head of school often on cutting back some of her objectives so that we can balance that against the greater community, because every dollar that was put into the school had to be paid for by increased tuition or increased enrollment. So it's that balance of enrollment and tuition and other objectives that had to be looked at there. Here we're talking about getting into a position where we're trying to move away from tuition. So we're reducing the amount of revenue that we have coming into the school. So we're going to have to go out there, provide more discipline, more governance, and greater fundraising. And I think those are all things that I can help with, and happy to answer any questions around that.
Thank you, Anthony. So it sounds like your focus, if you were to be appointed to the board, would be on financial, fiscal aspects, that sort of thing. Do you think that, so one thing that you mentioned is that you heard some rumblings about the Chrysler building income stream being perhaps threatened. Do you think that, how would you move away from that, do you think? Or is that a whole area that we want to move away from, or, real estate, or?
Yeah, certainly we want to protect ourselves. Yeah, I don't know enough about at this point around the legal issues there. But we do know that, to the extent that we have a tenant that can't pay, that creates significant financial distress for us. So the key there is obviously engaging early, making sure that we're addressing those issues completely, protecting our legal rights, but also thinking broader strategically around what that means and how that, maybe we're talking about, a 100-year asset. So, we have to take a long-term perspective with respect to a lot of these decisions that we have to make. So we have to balance our short-term objectives around, accelerating the pace towards tuition-free, and thinking about, some of the questions you highlighted earlier. How is the school going to change? How is learning going to change? How do our assets change? And all that's going to be important consideration and for the governance of the school and the direction that the board provides.
Okay. So in that context, the 10-year plan, I think a question that I've heard from various alumni is that people are a little concerned that the 10-year plan stay on track. Obviously, a lot of the assumptions made in that plan are upended by this whole situation right now. Do you think it's still feasible to return to free on that same time frame?
So I would say one, the Alumni Association, the community voted overwhelmingly to support that plan and to get us to a position where we're tuition free within 10 years. That should be our objective, and we should do whatever we can to achieve that objective. But obviously these are uncertain times, and I think that, flexibility on adapting that plan, on, considering, intermittent milestones, et cetera, all that's going to have to be evaluated. And I don't know enough today about, some of the questions you were highlighting to Carol. I don't know where we are from a budget perspective. I'm not, neither Carol or I are in a position today to answer those questions. What we're in a position of both of us to say is that we know how important it is, and we're going to do our best to keep the school on the path that we think is right, which is obviously consistent with the objectives of the CUAA.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention or focus on?
The only thing I would just summarize here and say at the end is that, these are uncertain times. It's just, it's a credit to all of you, all the people of the CUAA, the people that participate in this call, that we all care so much about Cooper Union that we're here because we want to make a difference. And regardless of who gets elected, we need to think about that. We need to make sure we're continuing to give back. And that was part of what I talked about in my statement, was that, Cooper Union did a lot of things right, but they didn't necessarily show us that the obligation we have to give back because of the opportunity that we had. So that's the biggest takeaway for all of us, is how do we figure out how to keep the path forward, how to keep the mission, and to keep Cooper Union alive and healthy.
Thanks, Anthony. And I really appreciate, your participating and your running, and what you've said. Carol actually wanted to say something before we move on to the next candidate. So let me just navigate over to her. Okay, Carol, the floor is yours.
Thanks. And I'm sure Anthony would agree with me here, and we can give him a chance to weigh in on this. But the one thing we all have to feel very positive about is the great leadership we have in the school administration now. Laura Sparks is doing a fantastic job. Her messaging throughout this whole COVID-19 crisis has been spot on. if we're going to succeed, if we're going to make it, it's going to be under her leadership. And I do feel very positively about that. I just wanted a chance to mention that. And I'm sure Anthony would agree. I'm going to go back on mute now.
You don't have to jump right back on mute. Thank you, Carol. We actually have a couple more minutes allocated to the trustees. Carol, I thought I would circle back, if you don't mind. I thought I'd circle back and ask you if you feel, if you have any thoughts about how to improve communications coming out of the Board of Trustees or out of the college in general to the alumni specifically.
To the alumni. Well, I don't know what kind of initiatives they're working on right now, and this isn't really answering your question. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I think they need
Go
to
ahead.
communicate with the wider community better. I think that we are a gem in the city, and they're doing great things in the Great Hall. They were starting to get, big crowds with really great speakers and starting to become a real vital place in New York. Years ago, we pressed them to try to create a narrative, like I said, about why should Cooper be free for everybody? Why shouldn't people who can afford it pay? They've never really come out with a story that can successfully explain why that's such a special thing. I don't know if they're still working on it or what, but they seem to be saying, and they've said in trustee updates that's very hard to do. So I want to get in there, roll up my sleeves and help them figure out how to do that. But that's not a message for alumni, because we alumni already know how special it is that Cooper was free for us.
Thanks, Carol.
Thanks.
And I think that's definitely a good focus for communications out of the college and out of the board. And thank you both. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Anthony. And I'm going to.
Do you want to just give Anthony another chance? Because you gave me a second chance. Maybe he wants to add anything.
Fair enough.
Thanks, Carol. I guess the only other thing I just will certainly second Carol's view on Laura Sparks and what she's doing and the job she's done. That's part of why I'm here now, right? I think that you need alignment of the community as well as with the leadership in the school, and I see a great opportunity for the CUAA, the board, and for the administration to work together to achieve the objectives, which is extremely important. So thank you. And I hear everybody, it must be 7 because I hear everybody cheering outside my window for the workers.
That's great. It is 7, right on time. Thank you both. And I'm going to move on now to our candidate for treasurer of the CUAA, Ron Vogel. So Ron, please introduce yourself and say what you'd like to say. You're still on mute, Ron. Hang on. Sorry, everybody. We're just hitting some technical snafu. Ron, you still muted? Looks like you're still muted.
You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Hi,
Good to
I'm
see you.
Ron Vogel. I am running for treasurer of the CUAA. A little background, I've been involved with the CUAA since 2014. I'm currently serving out my 2017 to 2020 term on the CUAA Council. I graduated from the School of Engineering with a degree, a bachelor's in engineering, chemical engineering, as well as a master's in chemical engineering. I currently work as a patent attorney here in New York, and in a former life, I was a Wall Street banker. So I think that combination will really help me perform the required duties as treasurer. I've also got the luxury or opportunity of relying on some of our former extremely capable treasurers, Dan Burke, Steve Vetterizi, Darrell Lowe. So in sum, I think I can bring 4 to 5 years of knowledge of how the council works and ramp that up with my background, and look forward to serving if elected.
Thanks, Ron. So I got a few questions from alumni, and I'd like to ask one of those questions to you now. Could
I'm
you
not
please
disclosing my tax returns.
just enter your social security number here. Could you please clarify your current position, stance, and thoughts about the Alumni Association's efforts to become a 501c3 organization? And maybe just for people who don't know, if you can just give a brief summary of what that means and what your position on it is.
First of all, my personal position, I don't think is necessarily germane to the role as treasurer. Maybe it will be the treasurer also serves on the executive committee, so it may be more germane there. But backing up, the alumni, the CUAA is investigating and has been investigating whether it should incorporate itself as a 501c3 corporation. I've been involved in doing some of the, as a lawyer, helping out, making sure we seek the right and receive the right expert counsel from tax attorneys on whether an alumni organization such as ours could do that. And I'd like to clarify now, based on the research, it's clear that an alumni association like ours could be. I think it's important, if you're asking my view on this, I think it's important, like with a lot of stuff, to get all the facts on the pros and the cons. I know that there was a referendum on this a couple of years ago. And so, I mean, it's important to respect the will of the greater alumni, but I think we should also make sure that we understand what this will mean in terms of different reporting requirements. You know, that may be something that a future treasurer, be it me or someone else, will have to do. I don't think it's onerous. And again, it's certainly within our capability. But given what the two trustee candidates were talking about, and I echo a lot of what they say, I think that something like the 501c3 corporation issue is not it still should be investigated, but it's, given the times now, I don't think it's a primary issue. It's something that we can take the time to explore. I'd also like to just echo what Carol said, that to get through these times, to stay on course of something close to the 10-year plan, we're going to have to work really closely with the school. We're going to rise or fall together. So, by way of discretion, and I hope that we can explore the 501c3, but again, I don't see that's an issue. It's not something that needs to be resolved, in the next couple of months.
Okay, fair enough. Also, in terms of, you mentioned reporting requirements. If we were to become a 501c3, are there any responsibilities of the association that would change, other than that we would have to sort of do our taxes in a different way and report our income in a different way?
That's a good question. And that's one of the things, again, myself included, we need to be fully educated on that there will be different reporting requirements. This all, depends on what kind of budget we have. There will certainly be there's a possibility of there will be different reporting requirements I don't think they would be onerous from what I've seen so far, but I couldn't give you the exact details on that until I knew, what our budgets would be going forward. In this period of uncertainty, our budgets are obvious, I think, are, pale in comparison to what the school's facing, but there is an interlinking there. So we're not sure what kind of environment we're going to be operating under. But given the current situation, I don't think the reporting requirements would change much. But that with this change, it also, one thing I'd like to say is that in my 5 years of being involved in the council, I've had the pleasure of working with several very talented and devoted people on that. And, transitioning to a 501c3, doing that, it'll be incumbent on us to make sure that we keep recruiting talented and devoted volunteers to run a volunteer 501c3 corporation.
Thank you. Another question that I received from an alumni that I'd like to pass on to you. Are you committed to reporting to the council regularly on treasury and budget matters?
Am I, if as hypothetically speaking, as treasurer?
As treasurer, yes, I'm sorry, yes. As treasurer, are you committed to reporting regularly to the council on treasury and budget matters?
Certainly, yes. I mean, that's something that at first it gets funneled up through the executive committee, but regular updates are, yes. I mean, that's I'd have to look at what what some of the predecessors have done, but I think that's it's important. That goes along with the whole transparency, which I think is important to the operation of the CUAA. So yes.
Thank you. And another question I got from another alumni was, alumni would like to hear one thing that you would improve about the Alumni Association if you were elected.
Generally in terms of the association, or specifics?
In terms of what your role would be as treasurer and as a member of the executive committee. We all, just anything that that you feel we could do better, or that you could do better if you're there.
Well, certainly, if I were to step into this role, I would be able to, if there was something I could improve, be it something like you said, reporting transparency, or something within the treasurer function itself, I would certainly suggest that. I'm all for that. Again, I think it's important that, be it the 501c3 issue or any of the big issues consuming the council, I think it's important to have all the facts on the table. That's what I do in my professional life, assess and vet facts. So other than that, maybe as a member of the committees on the council, I would bring my context in. In these times, I think it's important to have people with differing experiences. So maybe my hybrid of law and finance can help inform conversations, or be a voice for certain people out there in the greater alumni body.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. And I just want to say we really appreciate your running and all the work that you've done. And we're going to move on now to the candidate for CUAA Secretary, Anna Brook. So Anna, please unmute yourself. I'm going to spotlight you here, and please introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for organizing this and for attending. this event. So my name is Anna Brook. I graduated Cooper Union in 2004 with a BSc. After that, I went on to Harvard Law School and have been an attorney, like Ron, practicing intellectual property litigation since then. As some background, I'm part of a bit of a Cooper Union family. I heard about Cooper Union from my cousin who was a graduate. Then he was a Chemie. I went to Cooper Union. Then after that, my brother also went and graduated at Cooper Union. And all of us had the benefit of a free education, and I really want to contribute to make it that possible for future generations of students. I stayed involved with Cooper Union through participating in things like the Invention Factory, setting up the Alumni in Law Affinity Group, and organizing various events for alumni and students. But now I want to make my contributions more formal and run for the secretary of the CUAA. And I think that will help me contribute to the effort to a free Cooper Union. I think that effective communication leads to engaged alumni, and engaged alumni are the ones who will donate and hopefully increase their contributions for the ones that are already donating. And what I will try to avoid is that too often I hear after some event or some fundraiser or some effort, somebody says, "Oh, that was great. Too bad I didn't hear about it before." And I'd like to get the word out in advance to and to actually target specific people, whether alumni or in the community, who based on their interests. And I think my experience as an attorney and a litigator, managing complex cases and keeping large teams on task and on schedule will help me to effectively communicate with the alumni, the community at large, and to be the CUAA's record keeper. And I'm hoping to work with current Secretary Mary to have a smooth transition and continue the good work that she's doing and carry on. On a personal note, I now live in New Jersey, the same town where I lived while commuting to Cooper Union through New Jersey Transit and Hoboken and the like. Although now I'm joined by my husband and 4 kids, and the oldest one is 10 years old. So, hoping that the 10-year plan works out and he gets into Cooper Union for free. And I'm currently homeschooling him to the best of my abilities, so he has the grades to do it. So thank you.
Thank you, Anna. That sounds really challenging. But they're so quiet right now.
Yeah, if you saw the door peeked open a couple of times behind me.
Okay. So you spoke a little earlier about getting the word out about things that are going on with the Alumni Association more effectively. A question that I got from an alumnus is, what do you feel is the most important role that the secretary plays, and why?
So, well, one is the role of actually, attending meetings and keeping track of what's happening in the meetings, but it's also to communicate with the stakeholders, with the administration, with the students, with the alumni as to what's going on, and to frame a message in such a way that that will encourage people to support Cooper Union, whether it's financially or through other means, and to understand what a special place it is.
Thank you. Let's see here. Another question that I received from an alumnus. This is really a question that they wanted me to ask of every candidate on the CUAA, which is basically, could you just tell us one thing that you like about the CUAA and one thing that you would like to improve.
So I think a good thing is that it brings together interested alumni from the different schools and from different years, and gets this collective knowledge and experience, and gets everybody's, what everybody brings to the table, and you get the benefit of all of that. Just from a perspective of alumni outside of the councils, that I would say to kind of get our message across a bit more. That's an area I would try to improve.
Okay, thank you. Another question I got from an alumnus was, are there any new projects that you'd like to see the Alumni Association become involved in that you can think of?
So one thing that I'm actually in the early stages of exploring now is how to educate alumni with creative ways to donate, basically other avenues of fundraising rather than soliciting a check. So now with changes in some and tax regulations, which I will not pretend to know very well, this is just what I hear on a kind of high level, that there are ways to donate that will be more beneficial for personal tax purposes than there were before, and explore things such as planned giving, and do some kind of organized outreach where we can provide information to alumni so that if they're not prepared to contribute now, they can come up with ways to do so that will have a benefit to them as well.
And that's interesting too, because it kind of connects to your other priority that you mentioned of communicating more effectively with with the alumni body. That's not really a question. I'm just
well, just as part of my career and kind of skill set is kind of to be annoying and reminding people to do things and keeping them focused on something. And so if you're and explaining things, and so I guess that turned into a positive thing, is staying relevant, staying engaged.
Thank you, Anna. And is there anything else that you'd like to bring up or mention with our time here?
Just I'm really looking forward to increasing my contribution to Cooper alumni community and the students, and get us through this time and beyond.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Really appreciate your participation and your running. And we are going to, let me see if we have I'd like to speak with the candidate for the VP of Alumni Events, Kelly Okuzozek, but she's not here. So for now, let's move on to our candidate for VP for Faculty Student Liaison. That's Donato. So Mr. Giacolone, I'm gonna, okay, you're unmuted. Let me focus on you. And hello, please introduce yourself and speak a little bit about the role.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for organizing this, and thank you all for attending. My name is Donato Giacolone. I am a School of Architecture graduate in 1983. I'm a registered architect. I'm a partner in a small firm here in Manhattan. For the past year, I've been the co-chair of the faculty-student liaison, and I was asked to fill that position. And I was working with Mark O'Grady, who was the VP at the time, and still is. And I found this to be a great opportunity. I loved getting into all the alumni affairs. I loved attending all the meetings with the faculty at the architecture school. And we also, at the beginning of the year, we met with all the deans from the 3 schools. And I would welcome the opportunity to continue working with the Cooper Union Alumni Association in this capacity and to take over the role of the VP. And I think with the experience I've had this past year, I can fulfill the role. And thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So I'd start off with another question that I received from an alumnus. Can you please explain in summary what the actual job is for the VP for Faculty Student Liaison?
Well, from watching this year's VP, and I was helping him. We organized meetings with all the deans at the beginning of the year, got their take on what their schools are doing, reported back to the Alumni Association. And there was one representative for each school, art, engineering, and architecture. I happened to be the architecture rep. I attended all the faculty meetings, and someone else attended the other respective schools. And we kept minutes, we answered questions if anything came up, and we reported back.
Back to the Alumni Association?
Yes, back to the Alumni Association.
And student representatives also attend those meetings, correct?
Yes, they do. They're there also at the faculty meetings.
So, and it's good that you've been in this role as a co-chair for some time, and you've already been involved. How would you sort of sum up the tenor of things that you've heard specifically from students? Where are the students at with things over the past year?
Well, with the latest with the COVID, a lot of them are, of course, working from home. They've been having a hard time. Some of them, I attended some of the review meetings for the graduate students. Everything was done digitally. Everything was presented via a meeting just like this. And for me, it seems like it's a difficult situation, but they seem to be getting through it, and the teachers are really helping them.
That's good to hear. What would you say were the main concerns that you heard out of students before this COVID crisis?
From attending meetings, they really did not have many complaints. I think just like every Cooper student, they're all happy to be there, and they all love being there.
That's good to hear. I'm going to put the same question to you that I got from an alumnus who asked me to ask it of every CUAA officer candidate. What would you say is something that you like about the CUAA, and what's something that you would like to improve about it were you to fill this role?
Well, what I like about it is basically the same thing that Anna had said, that you get all these different schools and years and different experiences together in one group, all trying to help the Cooper Union. it's a rare opportunity to be in such a group and to participate and to actually feel that you're doing something worthwhile and helping the school. The second part is what I'd like to see is actually something that's happening now. Is there was an ad hoc committee which I was part of for the Venice Biennale, which invited, some of the participants were Cooper Union School of Architecture Dean, some of the professors also, and some of the students. And at the same time, the alumni were invited. So that's like taking the whole group, Cooper students, Cooper Dean, Cooper alumni, and having them all participate in one event. So something like that is an amazing opportunity. Unfortunately, now it's going to be on to 2021, but we were having meetings and we're trying to organize how all of this can happen. So events like that are a great opportunity.
What was that that ad hoc committee called again? You said something.
It's for the Venice Biennale, Architecture Biennale.
Okay. And that's like a thing that happens every 2 years, I guess.
Every 2 years in Venice. 1 year it's art, next year is architecture.
Okay, that's interesting. I just needed you to explain that word for the engineers, basically. Okay, Donato, thank you very much. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
No, just thank you for considering me.
Great, and thank you very much also for running and for your work on the Alumni Association. Okay, so we have one more candidate for sort of position, but that would be Kelly for VP of Alumni Events. Unfortunately, Kelly is not able to make it, so I guess let me just bring this to a close and then maybe open it up and see if we have any additional questions from panelists or any discussion. So this year we extended the election for a couple of weeks longer than it normally goes on for. We're nearing the end of that period. The election is this Saturday night at midnight Pacific time, so there are 3 days left. For anybody watching this, please register to vote at cooperalumni.org/register or contact, or you can send an email to contact@cooperalumni.org, and you'll receive a ballot if you do that within the next couple of days. And it's a tough choice. We have a lot of candidates that are really highly, especially I wasn't able to include everybody, but there are dozens of candidates for council in general and for the nominating committee as well. So please have a look at the ballot. If you go to cooperalumni.org, you can see information, more detailed information about every candidate who's running. And I think a theme that we really hit on tonight, everybody said this, is that we really need to pull together and push even harder and strengthen our ties between alumni and as well as the college, because that's the only way that we have even a chance of meeting the 10-year plan and getting this college back to free, which is what every alumni wants. Sorry guys, I'm still okay. So I guess if there's anything that any panelist or anyone would like to say before we conclude tonight, please, please unmute yourself and the floor will be yours. We have a few more minutes remaining. We actually have Margaret, our CUAA president here. Margaret, if you'd like to add anything, please feel free. Margaret, can you hear me?
Yes, I just was on mute. Shankar, thank you for this excellent presentation. I wondered, and thank you to everyone who is so graciously contributing to support the Cooper Union, especially during these very difficult times. It's wonderful, though, to see everyone and participate with everyone via Zoom. The only thing that I wanted to add, Shankar, is if you could just reiterate what persons need to do if they wanted to change their voting. That's the only thing. If you could just clarify that.
Oh, sure. So everyone who receives a ballot receives it via an email, and that email contains a link to a ballot which is unique to you, which is assigned to that email address. So when you click that link, go to the ballot and make your selections. But the selections, if you want, you can go back again and change that, and change your selections if you want or even just see what you voted for if you forgot, by going back to the email that you received initially and clicking on the link again. And that option will be available. That ballot will be open for you basically through a secure connection until midnight this Saturday, Pacific time, the 23rd. So to sum that up, basically, if you want to change your vote or look at your ballot again, go back to the email that you received from SurveyMonkey that contained the ballot in the first place, and you can click on that. And if you received a ballot but you have not voted yet, then I've been sending you reminders approximately once a week, and I'm going to do it a little more frequently now that we're close to the end. You can also click on the reminder. The reminder contains the same unique and secure link to your ballot, and so that can be changed at any time up until the end of the election in 3 days. Margaret, was there anything else that you wanted to add, or does that answer your question?
It answers my question. Thank you very much, Shankar. This is wonderful.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, so I guess are there any other questions about process or anything that's on anyone's mind? Please,
Shankar, could I ask a question, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. This is Mary Lynch. I had the misfortune of graduating in a crashed economy in '82. And my decade, not me, but my decade as a whole, grumbled about the school a lot for quite a long time because the school did nothing to support the new graduates during the crash when no one had a job. I believe only one person got hired from the engineering school in '82. A whole bunch of companies, big billion-dollar companies, had made offers to the students and then reneged them. And while other schools refused to allow those recruiters to come back again for a year or so to kind of penalize them for what they did, Cooper did nothing. Cooper did no extra career help, etc. And the consequence of that was to create a group of bitter alumni. And I have spent much of my 40 years as an alumni trying to erase some of that bitterness. So the question comes up, Once again, the school is graduating a class into a job market that is lousy. Once again, some of the students back in January thought they had solid job offers and they got reneged. And of course, we all understand why, but it does seem like if we're going to take a lesson from the past, we need to do more outreach, the school does. So back then they didn't have a career office, now they do have one, but what are we going to do to ensure that the class graduating now does not feel betrayed by their school? What are we going to do to provide them extra services and help? Because this is, again, an unusual year, and I happen to think it might be worse than 82. But I do know that one of the mistakes made in 82 was the school seemed callous and uncaring once you graduated. So I don't know if any of the officers would like to say something about that, or if they've had ideas, if they've been thinking along those lines. I think somebody who's going to be facing a lot of that might be you, Donato, as a faculty and student liaison. I'm curious what services the school might offer the recent graduates who don't have jobs. Will they get to come back and do career fairs again as graduates, but go with the seniors to career fairs? Or what kind of things might the school offer?
That's a very good question, Mary. I really don't know the answer to that right now, but I can keep an eye out and see what they come up with, and possibly ask the question at the next faculty meeting or the next time we see the deans.
Regarding the art students, it's come to my attention that they didn't get to put on a senior show, and that is oftentimes for the artists a way of launching their career. So I think it's going to come up in September or October. Will the school offer the recent graduates an opportunity to have a senior show? Kind of make it up a little later. I bet that's going to be on the agenda. But I think that we should be considerate of that, and kind of, as the Alumni Association, stand up for these young alumni. They're going to need extra support.
Just to add, and just kind of off the top of my head, and this is something that I was doing recently, is anytime some kind of, a job opening comes across my radar that would fit a graduating student, I'd funnel it to the careers office as, here, if anybody's looking, check this out. And I think if we ask the broader alumni community to be on the lookout for any opportunities for graduating students, which are now likely few and far between, and think of Cooper when something comes across, not just brush it off, that we may collect some amount of openings, and possibly a warm opening if it's through an existing alum.
Thank you. I think we just heard a couple of really good ideas about how to potentially support students who definitely are graduating in a really not great time right now. One idea we just heard from sorry, just to sum up for everybody, one idea we just heard was to any job openings that we hear, and there's so many accomplished alumni who are involved with the association, to funnel any job openings we hear that might fit, recent grads to the career office. And I think going forward, we should also try to think about if there are any ways that we can do that in a more efficient manner. That's one thing. Another thing was, so we're hearing that student shows may be postponed till maybe later on in the year. And so they might be at a pretty unusual time. I think we should all keep that in mind and really pledge to do a full court press when that happens, and really publicize senior shows as much as possible when they come up. That's something we should do in general, but I think we got to focus on that even more this time around.
I want to clarify, Shankar, I didn't hear that they're going to be later. I heard other schools are doing it later. I think it's up in, Cooper is still possibly discussing this behind the scenes. I don't think any announcement's been made.
Oh, okay, understood, understood.
There's a good comment in the comment section in the chat.
See that? Let's see. The alumni, this is a comment from one of our viewers, Jay Collins. I think the alumni directory needs to be opened up to all the seniors, juniors, and rising juniors for the students. Okay, that's a good idea actually. There is a directory. There is an alumni directory that's open to alumni. That is maintained by the college, which I find to be a useful tool from time to time. That's definitely something that we can bring up with them. Our own internal databases are a little messy, but the support.cooper.edu does have that tool available for alumni. So that's something we can bring up. I'm not sure where that would go, but I think it's definitely a good idea.
Yeah, Shankar, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, please.
So one of the things that I would suggest is, both in the board that I served on and some of the boards that I've advised, when a specific issue like this comes up, the board usually is set up with certain committees, but it would also be helpful to set up specific task force to address items like this. And clearly, we're going to be in a unique situation here. It's interesting, Mary, that we actually can draw on experience that we've had in the institution when this has happened, but there probably isn't someone setting up right now to reach out to the class of '82 and ask them about the challenges that they've had and to address that. So, I mean, it's an idea that you can have at the board level, but it's also another reason why we just need to have better communication, better cooperation between the CUAA and the board, so we can get ideas like that in front of the board and address them and to leverage off the alumni base that we have.
That's an idea. A task force at the board level devoted specifically to helping students at this time. Sorry if I'm not summarizing that right, but
No, absolutely, Shankar.
That's okay. That's a good idea. Sorry, I'm just reading a comment that Margaret has shared with me. Actually, Margaret, could you speak to this idea, the fundraising idea, please?
Sure. So recently, Carol Wolf and also Kelly Acuzzo-Zach at the council have been discussing some new approaches to fundraising, and they involve adopting a freshman donating on their behalf, or a senior or a person in distress and donating to the Cooper Union on their behalf. So it's a new idea. We haven't really explored it, but if Mark Vasquez would be the chair of the fundraising committee, it might be articulated further. But it was something that Kelly and Kelly Acuzzo-Zach and Claudia Giordano were, speaking of during the last council. I'm very interested in that idea.
What does it mean to donate on someone's behalf? You mean donate in their name to the college?
Yeah, double your donation, basically. To the school, to the Cooper Union.
There is a feature available whenever you donate to the school to donate in somebody's name. That's always been available, and that is a nice idea. It's something that anybody can do at any time.
Nice, but it sounds like Margaret is talking about something a little different, though.
I know. I think it's an idea that needs to be fleshed out.
Okay. There's an idea that I heard from an alumnus, one of the people one of my classmates from the class of 2003, which comes up actually every once in a while. And it comes up even with people who are really not involved with any of this alumni stuff, which is especially, it's come up a lot since since the financial crisis of 2013 and the start of charging tuition, which was, there are actually a lot of alumni out there who are interested in directly paying the tuition for students who are not available, who are not, well, for students basically. I don't know if that's not really something we can like flesh out in the next 10 minutes, but it is an idea that I've heard a lot, and I think would get a lot of new engagement from people who've like been disconnected, as well as obviously like helping students, which is the main purpose of what we're trying to do here. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that concept. If you do, please speak up.
Shankar, the other thing, which is really building on what Anthony Yano was speaking of, the task force, is that I've been writing all the trustees individually and asking them for recommendations with the intent of setting up a task force. So some have responded already. Lynn Lander has responded. So it's, I believe, a very important thing to do, because I agree with Carol and Anthony that it's going to be a very challenging 2021.
Absolutely. Okay. That, and just to clarify for everybody, that is the task force that was mentioned, that Anthony mentioned earlier at the Board of Trustees, that's specifically focused on providing, whatever kind of assistance is needed specifically to students in this time.
Yeah, just to clarify a little further, I've only been writing to the alumni trustees, which are on the executive committee, and asking them to really focus in terms of strategies that could be part of a task force, because I believe that we're going to have to set up a task force very soon as an ad hoc committee.
That's good. I'm glad that you guys are already, already making progress on that.
Right. There's another issue that the CUAA kind of is not so great at doing well, and I'd like to hear how the various officer candidates would respond to this. It's in our Constitution, and it was in our prior Constitution too, that we need to include in our council and our leadership people from throughout the country. And of course, now that extends to throughout the world, not just New York. So during the most recent 10 years, we have been making a concerted effort to have alumni at large, on our council, from Chicago, from Washington, D.C., from Florida. But they say they make great effort to watch us on our various video channels, and the communication isn't good, they can't hear, so forth and so on. And that's about all we've done, is make our meetings available electronically online for remote participation. We haven't, in my estimation, done enough to support the regional group activities and keep a certain energy going amongst our regional groups. It is, as I say, a core thing in our Constitution that we not become too New York centric, that we also support alumni everywhere. And so I'm curious how you guys, if you have any ideas along that line, and is that important, supporting the alumni who don't live in New York?
I know it's not really for me, as I'm not running for an officer position to say, but one of the benefits of the COVID-19 crisis has been it's allowed us a lot of new technology to come up. And these, I've been in an awful lot of Zoom meetings in the last month and a half, and they run pretty smoothly. There's all kinds of ways. It might be so easy to have a countrywide, happy hour someday. And, just if we communicate out there and get people in, I think that this will be the year of remote engagement myself.
That's a good idea. And this tool that we're using now, what do you call this, Premier or deluxe version of Zoom, can support large groups, much larger groups even than what we're having now. And you can divide them into rooms, and that actually we should look into using this, or maybe using WebEx to do it like a worldwide or nationwide kind of Zoom happy hour. You call it, hey, it's 5 o'clock somewhere or something. Sweet. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to bring up? Actually, and before I forget, one of the attendees asked me to just to go over again the candidates and attendees who are here tonight. So before we sign off, let me do that. So some of the attendees we had tonight that were not alumni. First of all, let me start with that. We had Margaret Matz, who's our Alumni Association president. She's the one you saw, for you viewers who don't know her, she's the one you heard talking with the big letter M. We also had Mary Lynch, who is the current secretary, correct? And has played a number of roles in the CUAA for a long time. And myself, I'm just the host, and I chair the election committee on CUAA. And in the background, we have Anthony Manganiello, who's been extremely helpful in setting up these communications and this Zoom meeting and a lot of other things. And he's been helping run this meeting in the background. Thank you, Anthony. Okay, so the candidates that we have been considering tonight are candidates for alumni trustee and for executive CUAA officer positions. So the alumni trustee candidates are Carol Robinson Wolf, Art 1984. And you know what? I'm going to spotlight you each as I do this. It looks like Carol, you happen to have been spotlighted. So let me just do that for 1 second. Spotlight. Hi, that's Carol. Okay, and the other candidate for alumni trustee is Anthony Ayano, electrical engineering, 1985. Hello, Anthony.
Thanks, Shankar.
Thank you. Let's see here. We have our candidate for treasurer, Ron Vogel, Chemi, 2001. Hey, Ron. We have our candidate for secretary. That's Anna Brook, engineering, 2004. Hi, Anna. Let's see here. And we have our candidate for VP for faculty student liaison. That's Donato Giacolone. Please let me know if I mispronounced that. Thank you. Thank you, Donato. And we also had one more candidate who was unable to attend tonight for VP for Alumni Events. That's Kelly Ocusio-Zach, Art 1990. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and thank you for watching. Again, spring 2020 CUAA election runs until midnight Saturday, May 23rd, Pacific time. If you've not received a ballot, please email contact@cooperalumni.org and let me know, and we'll take care of that. Go to cooperalumni.org for more details on all of these candidates, including some of the candidates that we did not have time for tonight that are running for for council and for nominating committee. So thank you all for participating. Any questions or anything, please email contact@cooperalumni.org, and we will be sharing this video shortly with the community. Should be coming through tomorrow. Thank you, everybody, and please be well and be safe.
Thank you, everyone. Good night, and a special thank you to Kay Nordstrom for her incredibly diligent work on the nominating committee. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Kay. All right. Good night, all.